Week 16 of the fantasy football season. We know it's a crucial week in fantasy football here with the Final Four. And if you win this matchup, you're going to go to the championship. So here's running back start sit every matchup this week. Denver Broncos at the Los Angeles Chargers. Thursday Night Football. We know these are usually high-scoring games, but I don't trust any of these running backs on both these teams. These running backs haven't done much all season long. And Javonte Williams coming into the year, he was a starting running back for this Bronco team. Then they put Jamal McLaughlin in there at times, or Guestamay, and it just hasn't worked out as a whole this season. So this week, I don't want any part of this Bronco backfield. They're not going to put up production. They're not putting up points, and it's pretty much been Bo Nick defense leading the way. So Javonte Williams is sit. Jamal McLaughlin had a decent game last week, but he's banged up, not 100%. He's a sit. Gus Edwards is sit for this Charger team. If he's not getting into the end zone on a goal line stamper, he's not putting up fantasy points, and that's exactly what we saw last season from Edwards with the Ravens. He's a sit. Kamini Vidal, he's a backup, hasn't done much in the passing game. A sit for me as well. And in a tough matchup versus a good defense, I wouldn't trust these guys. Houston Texans at the Chiefs. Joe Mixon, he's a start each and every week. I know last week was a down week for Joe Mixon, but this offense, I think, in a tough matchup at Arrowhead, they're going to run the football more. Patrick Mahomes week to week with a mile ankle sprain, but knowing Mahomes, it wouldn't surprise me if he goes out there and plays this game. But still, I believe Joe Mixon and this Texan team, they need a patent win under their belt after they've been up and down over the last couple weeks here. And I think Joe Mixon goes out there and has a bounce-back performance. He's a start. Isaiah Pacheco, a flex option, obviously not 100%. And maybe rush back is Isaiah Pacheco, but I get it as well, where they're trying to get him going before the playoffs is Pacheco, get those reps in, get back into football shape. And the last 3 weeks, he just hasn't put up numbers. And this week in a matchup versus the Texans, they give up the third least amount of fantasy points to backs on the season. At best, he's a flex option. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Ravens. Najee Harris, he's a flex option. It's been an up and down season here for Najee Harris. And this week, not a great matchup where Baltimore's run defense has been good the majority of the season. So last week, Harris didn't do much. And he's another running back. If he's not finding the end zone most weeks than not, it's going to be tough for him to put up numbers. So this week, at best, he's a flex option. Jalen Warren is sit. He's the third down, passing downs back is Warren. We've seen a couple good games out of him, no doubt about it. But like I said, these guys, their ceilings aren't high. They need a decent amount of catches or looks to put up fantasy points. And this week, I just don't believe Warren goes out there and is a good game. Derrick Henry, he's a start each and every week. I know last week he put in a bad ball game, even though the Baltimore Ravens dominated with a big victory at the New York Giants. But Henry, we rarely see him put 2 bad games in a row up. I know he's got a lot of miles on his body this season, where a lot of touches for Henry, a lot of goal line touches and touchdowns. But he's a big-time running back, and this week I think he bounces back in this ball game versus the Steelers. Justice Hill is sit, and Justice Hill, he did take some work last week where it was a blowout victory at the New York Giants, including 40-yard-plus touchdown in that one. But Hill, every couple weeks we see him pop off for a big game. But this week versus Steelers, I think it's going to be ground and pound with Derrick Henry. He's a sit. New York Giants at the Falcons. Tyrone Tracy a start. Last week he got vultured at the goal line by Devin Singletary, so that took points off the board for him. And I know it was a down game for him, 4.5 fantasy points. But this week, indoor game, fast track, and a Falcon defense that isn't good. I think Tracy bounces back in a good matchup here, and he's a start. Devin Singletary a sit. Singletary, he really hasn't had major touches over the last few weeks here for this New York Giant team, and rightfully so. We know this Giant team's going nowhere this season. It's about playing the kids. It's about seeing if they could develop them good, and that's exactly been the case. He's a sit. Bijan Robinson a start. Bijan Robinson's been one of the best backs all season long, and he's been one of the only first-round backs that hasn't been a bust this season is Bijan Robinson. So coming off another big game, over 100 yards on the ground versus the Vegas Raiders. I think this week in a great matchup versus the Giants, he's one of the top 2-3 options at the position. Tyler Algier, he's a sit for me in this game. He's definitely been one of the better backup backs in all fantasy and pro football over the last few seasons is Tyler Algier. But we just haven't seen enough touches per game to have confidence in fantasy owners to go out there and put him in their lineup. So this week, Tyler Algier, even coming off a nice 12 touches, he's a sit for me in this ball game. Patriots at the Bills. Ramondre Stevenson's a flex option. There's not much upside with Stevenson as well if he's not scoring a touchdown, and he's not been doing much in the passing game all season long. So Ramondre Stevenson, I know he's been an okay back, a decent number 2 flex option for fantasy owners, but this week in a game where they could be chasing points early and often, I don't see a high ceiling season flex. James Cook, a start. Last week, a big game for James Cook. And this offense, they've been playing out of this world, especially over the last 2 weeks, 2 games over 40 points. Josh Allen's locked in. He might have got that MVP under his belt with a big season this year in the last 2 games especially. But James Cook, he's been a great running back for the majority of the season. And this week, back home, is this Buffalo Bill team in a good match. New England, he's a must-start. Detroit Lions at the Chicago Bears. David Montgomery, he's out for the season with a torn MCL, unfortunately. But if you're a Jahmyr Gibbs owner, I don't believe the touches are going to go up drastically. I still believe, obviously, all the goal line work he's going to get. Obviously, a majority of the passing downs work. But Craig Reynolds is definitely going to get mixed in. We saw last season when Montgomery missed some games. So Reynolds gets some playing time. So this week, Jahmyr Gibbs, he's locked in as a start. Great matchup at the Bears, where Aaron Jones just came off a big ball game. And Craig Reynolds, like I said, he's going to get touches, but not much of a factor in my opinion. He's a sit. DeAndre Swift, he's a flex option. Last week, one of his better games in the last month of the season. And Swift, he's always been a decent back, I believe. Could catch the football out of the backfield. He knows how to follow his blocks. He could get to the outside and make some plays. And this week, in a ball game, though, where they could be trailing early and often and chasing points, his ceiling as well, I don't think is that high. He's a flex. Cleveland Browns at the Bengals. Nick Chubb out for the season, broken foot, and he just can't catch a break. Is Nick Chubb. So I believe Jerome Ford, Donta Foreman. We're going to see a committee over there for this Brown team like we did early in the season. But these guys, their ceilings aren't high. Ford, he's got to catch the football a lot and make plays out of the backfield to put up numbers. And with the Jameis Winston quarterback, it's definitely a possibility. But if I'm going into a Final Four game to get to the championship, I'm not going to trust a guy like Jerome Ford or Donta Foreman. With Foreman, you got to rely on touchdown, and Ford, for the most part, you got to rely on a decent amount of receptions. Chase Brown, he's a start each and every week. One of the best running backs, believe it or not, in fantasy football this season. And ever since Zach Moss went down, he's put up elite numbers being the man in this backfield. So in a high-powered offense, a lot of touches, and a good receiving back out of the backfield must start. Tennessee Titans at the Indianapolis Colts. Tony Pollard, he's going to start each and every week. And him and Calvin Ridley, the only bright spots in this offense for season, in this offense for Tennessee. So this week in a good matchup at the Indianapolis Colts on the fast track, he's a start. Tajay Spears, a sit. I know last week he had 2 touchdowns with Spears, but a lot of garbage time in that ball game where Pollard, he didn't get a crazy workload, 17 touches in that one. But Spears, like I said, if he's not scoring touchdowns or if he's not getting a lot of catches out of the backfield, he really has end value all season long. And he's been banged up most of the season as well. So he's a sit. Jonathan Taylor, a start. Last week, a bonehead move where he was into the end zone but dropped the football at the 1-yard line before he got in. And then obviously that ball bounced and went out of bounds. So Jonathan Taylor this week, I think he's going to play with a chip on his shoulder. It's a good matchup. Indianapolis is back home. And after a bad play like that, you know you want to go out there the next week and redeem yourself. So I think Taylor, he could be in for one of his better games of the season, especially in a great matchup versus a bad defense. Los Angeles Rams at the Jets. Kyren Williams, he's locked in as a start each and every week. Once Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua came back weeks ago, his numbers definitely took a hit, but the last 3 weeks now, he's back on track as Kyren Williams. He's a physical back in between the tackles, can catch the football out of the backfield. Even though he's not the biggest of backs, he finds ways to make plays and finds the running lanes. And this week at a Jet defense that can't stop anyone, he's a start. Breece Hall a start. He came off injury last week as Breece Hall. He had a decent ball game, 13.10 fantasy points in PPR leagues. And Breece Hall, I don't think he lived up to the bill where he was that 4th or 5th overall pick in fantasy drafts, but he's still putting up numbers the majority of the season. This is a good matchup in a potential high-scoring game with the Rams coming to town, and I have confidence he could be a good start for fantasy owners. Philadelphia Eagles at the Commanders. Saquon Barkley, he's a start each and every week. Last week, I don't know what the deal was with Barkley, though. First half, he sat out a lot of that game with his helmet on the sidelines, where maybe he need to be cleared, or they were obviously cutting back on his workload. I just don't know what the case was, where Gainwell got a lot of work, but in the 3rd and 4th quarter, Barkley got a decent amount of touches, and who knows what it was, but obviously you came this far with Barkley. You're going to start him, even if it's limited touches. Brian Robinson Jr., he's a start. Big physical back out of the backfield. Obviously, Austin Eckler, he's on IR, most likely not returning this season, and Robinson, the man in that backfield. Jeremy McNichols will get touches at times. Same with Rodriguez, but this week in a big matchup, division matchups in the NFC East, he's a start. Arizona Cardinals at the Panthers. James Conner, he's locked in as a start. Last week he had a big ball game with James Conner in the victory for this Cardinal team versus the Patriots. So this week, a great matchup at the Panthers. Their run defense can't stop anyone. We saw the Dallas Cowboys go over 150 yards on the ground last week, including Rico Dotto, 149 yards on the ground. So Connor, a must-start. Chuba Hubbard to start. Last week, that Cowboy defense surprisingly contained Chuba Hubbard, where he just had a mediocre ball game. But this week, in this one, I think they can get him more involved in this one, is this Carolina Panther team. And Hubbard, he's been one of the better backs, believe it or not, all season long. So after a bad game, and we haven't seen 2 bad games in a row for Hubbard this season, he's a start. Minnesota Vikings at the Seahawks, Aaron Jones. It's been a great season for him in his first year with this Minnesota Viking team. And Jones, he's proven a lot of people wrong. I thought he was going to be injured as well this season, and maybe his best years were behind him. But he's a Pro Bowl type of running back this season with this Minnesota Viking team. They're having a great year, 12-2 on the year. And I think Aaron Jones and his offense has another good game in Seattle. He's a start. Cam Akers a sit. I know he had a late goal line touchdown in that one easy victory versus the Chicago Bears. But Akers, he's definitely gotten some work over the weeks where I think they're trying to maintain a little bit Aaron Jones' touches, but he's not been a fantasy option. He's a sit. Kenneth Walker, if he plays, he's a must-start each and every week, but he's been banged up over the last couple of weeks with the calf injury. So if Walker returns, I'm going to give him the start. This Viking run defense has been middle of the pack all season long. And now if Geno Smith's not going to be in this game, you know they're going to want to establish the run. And if Walker's out, Zach Charbonnet, a must-start the last couple of weeks. He's been putting up nice numbers as a starting running back. And I've said in other videos, if Charbonnet easily could be a starter on 10, 15 other teams. So this week, obviously, if Walker's out, he's a start. And if Walker plays, I don't think Charbonnet's going to see much of the field. Jacksonville Jaguars at the Raiders. Travis Etienne, a flex option. Last week, he got the majority of the touches. We always knew he was the better pass catching back out of the backfield, with Tank Bigsby is just strictly in between the tackles and an early downs back. So Etienne in a decent matchup. I actually like him as a flex option where this offense is decimated. Obviously, no Christian Kirk, no Evan Ingram, no Gabe Davis. And Etienne can help a little bit out of the backfield catching passes. Tank Bigsby is it, even though the game script could go in his favor, where this is either a close game or the Jaguars are playing with a lead. But like I said, some of these plays, it's just tough to trust them this deep into the season, trying to play to get to the championship. He's a sit. Alexander Madison, Amir Abdullah, Sincere McCormick, he was looking good for this Vegas Raiders team. He got banged up, and we saw him leave early in that one on Monday night with the ankle injury, where Alexander Madison and Amir Abdullah took the rest of the touches in the backfield. But the upside for these players isn't much. I know what Madison had 3 catches, 50 yards, but didn't do much on the ground. And Amir Abdullah, we know he's a receiving back, and he's not going to run the football in between the tackles. But both these players, you can't trust them. Their sits even in a good matchup. 49ers, the Dolphins, Isaac Guerrero, he's a start. I like the speed for Guerrero. I like the toughness. We're on a short week. He played with a sprained foot, and he put up some decent points. I'm not saying he went out there, had this monster game, but 11.5 fantasy points in PPR leagues. I thought was a pretty decent ball game for Guerrero in that one, where both teams weren't putting points on the board. So this week, with a good matchup in Miami, going to be warm weather, which is always a plus as well. Guerrero is a start, even though I know Deebo Samuel was taking some touches in the backfield. I don't think it matters because he's got that big play, running back upside and breakaway speed. Devon Achane, he's a start each and every week. Pretty much him and Tyreek Hill, Jonnu Smith, the 3 option in this offense for this Miami Dolphin team. So Achane, one of the best receiving backs out of the backfield. We know he's got home run ability. And this week versus the defense of the San Francisco 49ers, and back home where this Dolphin offense puts up 25-plus points per game. Achane, a must start. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Dallas Cowboys, Rashad White, Bucky Irving. This starts for me. This is one of the best running back tandems in the league. Rashad White, one of the best receiving backs out of the backfield. We saw it the last couple seasons. He can catch the football at a high rate, no doubt about it. And his in-between-the-tackle work has been getting better as well as the weeks have gone on here, with Bucky Irving obviously breathing down his neck. So Rashad White, he's a start weekly, especially in PPR leagues. And Bucky Irving, he was healthy last week, and he's a tough guy, no doubt about it. We've seen hip injuries, we've seen back injuries, but he hasn't missed a game. And last week, he went over 100 yards on the ground. So this week in a matchup at a Cowboy defense that's had trouble all season long with even mediocre offense, even though I think this offense is one of the better offenses in the league. They're both starts. Rico Dotto, he's a start. Rico Dotto, ever since they've named him the full-time starter and the touches have gone up, he's been one of the more productive backs, believe it or not, in fantasy football over the last month of the season is Rico Dotto. So last week coming off a big game, 149 yards on the ground, and that makes 3 games in a row with over 100 yards on the ground. You just got to ride the hot hand, and he's a start versus a defense that's been middle of the pack versus the run this season. And the final game Monday night, New Orleans Saints at the Packers. Alvin Kamara, abductor injury, but if he plays, he's a start each and every week. He's the last man standing in this offense with all the injuries. Derek Carr, obviously Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Taysom Hill, Kamara, he does it all. He had 17 fantasy points in PPR leagues last week versus a decent defense versus the Commanders. If he gives it a go, he's a start. And if he don't give it a go, Kendre Miller is going to be the starter for this New Orleans Saints team. And I'm not going to have 100% confidence to throw him out there in a ball game going to the championship, especially in a matchup versus a good defense of the Green Bay Packers, where they're going to zero in on the run and make Jake Haener try to beat him. So this week, if Kamara is out in this game and Kendre Miller is the starter, he's a sit. And Josh Jacobs, he's been a workhorse all season long. It's been a great signing for this Green Bay Packer team in the offseason, where it seems like Jacobs, he's getting 25, 30 touches a game, and now it seems like weekly he's at least minimum finding the end zone and getting anywhere from 15 plus fantasy points. So this week in a great matchup versus a banged-up Saints team, he's a start. So that's running back start sit every matchup in crucial Week 16 of the fantasy football season.